How much should you be charging for materials? That's essentially the question that we're going to be trying to answer here in this video. When you're buying materials, how much should you charge for those materials? We're going to be covering that in this video, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Pete with Shopbox and I'm coming at you today with another video. This video here, we're going to be talking about what materials truly cost for your sign shop. After polling about a half a dozen sign companies this past week, one of the things that came very clear was that not one shop actually charge the same amount for raw goods. I suppose it depends on exactly what kind of shop you are. If you're a manufacturing shop and you're buying sheets of Sintra, sheets of aluminum, coils of aluminum, what should you be charging your customers for those raw materials? Essentially, if you're a manufacturing facility, if you are a woodworking facility, if you make shirts, whatever the case is, you always have raw materials, cost of goods that go into putting the end product together. But essentially one of the biggest problems within our industry is not exactly knowing what to charge the customer for the material. Some people don't charge anything. If it costs them $100, they're just pushing the cost of that material to the customer. Essentially, you're just laying out the money, which is not right because you're not making any money that way. So let's talk about first what you should typically mark up your raw goods. There's no secret sauce here. What answers I'm going to give you, you may or may not want to implement into your shop, but it is common practice, it is best practices to mark up your raw goods by some sort of marginal percentage. What is that? Is that 10%? Is that 300%? It doesn't matter what it is, but in fact, you do need to make sure that you are charging for those materials. And why? Well, there's always spoilage, there's always wastage. I know that when you get a problem with a sign, you might have to reorder that material. You might have to, if your CNC machine screws up a sheet of material, guess who has to lay out that money to buy another sheet? That's right, you do. So why not make up for potentially some of that wastage, for some of that spoilage inside your price? So after talking to some business owners here, I kind of found some common ground on a reasonable margin percentage markup for materials, for raw goods. And that's going to be 1.5 times what it actually costs. So if a sheet costs $100, you're actually charging the customer $150. If it costs $50, you're charging the customer $75 for that. Now that principle may or may not be useful for you in your shop, but it's up for you to determine what your margins are and what they potentially could be, because there are a lot of shops out there that are just charging 10%, 20%, and that may not be enough. That may not be adding enough profit into your projects. That might not be adding enough to your profit margin. That might not be adding enough to your bottom line. So it's important to examine your raw materials and take a look at the risk factor. What happens if it gets damaged? How much are you going to have to lay out? What are your competitors' rates for square footage rates? That's an easier way to kind of backtrack and do the backwards math there for how you can determine what you should be charging for the material. For example, if your competitors are charging somewhere around $15 a square foot for a rigid sign panel with a digital print, you know what that $15 equates to. You can kind of do some backwards math there and determine that you might need to mark up that sheet of material, that rigid substrate, 100, 200, 300 times in order for that $15 a square foot to actually compute for your business. So there really is no secret sauce, but you should be marking up your raw materials at least 1.5%. That is 1.5. So if it's $100, you're going to times that by 1.5. You're going to get $150. And that seems to be a fair price to charge for a lot of the raw goods in our industry. Now, for those of you that don't know this, Shopbox has an amazing wastage calculator that you can turn on and off. So don't forget to turn on your wastage calculator, and you can set those percentage points of what you want to calculate for waste in your shop. A helpful tip here, in my shop, I always charge 7% wastage on vinyl, on laminate, on anything that I was wasting, whether or not it was going to be reused or compounded into another sign project. That's another topic for another day. But on average, shops are charging anywhere between 6 and 10%, and I used to charge 7%. I think that's a fair and honest price to calculate for wastage. So, are you going to start charging for your materials? Are you going to start charging a wastage fee for when you spoil or when you waste a raw material? Let me know. I'm curious to see what your comments are going to be. I'm curious to see if this video is going to help you in your business, add to your bottom line, add to your profit margins, and add to your business's success. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. And don't forget, stay positive out there.